At the end of a quiet cul-de-sac in Beverly Hills, hidden behind a tall wall of eucalyptus and sycamore trees, there once stood a mansion that looked like the very definition of celebrity escape. Warm Mediterranean stucco, curved balconies, terracotta roofs, and a long, winding driveway that kept prying eyes at a distance. From the outside, it appeared serene, an oasis carved into one of Los Angeles's most sought-after enclaves. But long before Britney Spears ever stepped foot inside, the house already carried the faintest whisper of the tension that often clings to Hollywood real estate, the tension between privacy and spectacle. The estate had been built during the late 1990s, at a time when Beverly Hills was shifting from old money elegance to something flashier, louder, more shielded from the world. Developers carved new mansions into the hills, each larger and more ornate than the last. This particular property was designed with one purpose: insulation, a fortress disguised as a villa. High walls, limited sightlines, multiple entrances, and a layout that created separation between the public rooms and the private inner world where its owners lived. In Los Angeles, a home is never just a home. It's a strategy. Before Britney arrived, the mansion quietly passed through the hands of a few entertainment insiders. Producers, agents, people used to moving in shadows. They valued the same thing Britney would soon need most: distance. Paparazzi had begun colonizing the hills long before she came along, weaving their way through foliage, climbing into trees, building ladders taller than backyard fences. The property's location, tucked into a cul-de-sac with only one way in and one way out, offered something rare, a pocket of silence in a city that never stopped watching. When Britney bought the estate in 2007, she didn't just purchase a house. She inherited all the architectural decisions made by those before her. The walls meant to protect, the windows meant to hide, the corridors that made the home feel like a maze. She was stepping into a space built to shield someone from the world. But soon, this house, once imagined as a sanctuary, would become the stage for one of the most publicly dissected unravelings in pop culture history. When Britney Spears arrived at the gates of the Beverly Hills mansion in early 2007, she wasn't just looking for a place to live. She was looking for something far more fragile: control. After years of touring, relentless publicity, a collapsing marriage, and a custody battle rapidly turning hostile, she needed a space that felt impenetrable. A place where no one could barge in, no cameras could peek through curtains, and no familiar faces could judge the quiet unraveling she felt inside. This mansion, perched at the end of a private road, offered exactly that. At least that's what she hoped. She chose the property at a time when her world was shrinking by the day. Every outing became a public event. Her car was followed, her grocery trips documented, her expressions analyzed. Even the most ordinary moments, holding her sons, stumbling at a gas station, sitting alone in her car, became headlines within hours. Privacy wasn't a luxury, it was disappearing. The mansion promised to give it back. Inside, the home's architecture offered a different kind of comfort. The layout was sprawling and compartmentalized, with long corridors and tucked-away rooms that made it feel like a world unto itself. There were places to hide, places to retreat, places to simply breathe. Celebrities often choose homes for their grandeur. Britney chose this one for its silence. There was also the emotional pull of starting fresh. She was newly separated, newly scrutinized, newly vulnerable. The mansion symbolized a reset, a chance to rebuild her life inside walls she controlled. No more sharing space with a husband who'd turned distant. No more negotiating the emotions of a household unraveling. Her sons would have wide hallways to run through. She would have a bedroom untainted by old arguments. She believed the house could be a beginning. But the irony was already waiting in the shadows. The very privacy that drew her to the mansion would soon make it a pressure cooker. Isolation would not soothe. It would magnify. And the quiet cul-de-sac at the top of the hill would transform into a battleground, surrounded day and night by a swarm of cameras, helicopters, and strangers who treated her front gate like a front row seat. When Britney chose this mansion, she thought she was choosing safety. She had no idea she was also choosing the stage for her darkest chapter. When Britney Spears moved into the Beverly Hills mansion, she didn't step into it quietly. She reshaped it. For a brief moment before the chaos outside intensified, the house became a kind of creative project. A space she wanted to soften, brighten, and turn into something resembling the stability she could no longer find anywhere else. Britney has always been someone who nests, someone who rearranges rooms, someone who finds comfort in the small details of a home. And in those early weeks, the mansion became a canvas. The property was already luxurious, but Britney infused it with her own contradictions, childlike softness and superstar sparkle. She added plush textures, pale colors, scented candles in nearly every room. She expanded the children's play areas, filling them with toys, bright rugs, and soft corners meant to shelter Sean and Jaden from the growing tension between their parents. She even personalized the backyard, adjusting the landscaping to make it more open for her boys to run. The house was enormous, but she tried to make it feel intimate. Security, however, was the part she upgraded most aggressively. Not because she wanted to, but because she had to. Paparazzi were already circling the neighborhood, climbing embankments, hiding behind trash bins, and using telephoto lenses that could capture her through a second-floor window. So Britney poured money into alarms, reinforced gates, and privacy screens. She ordered blackout curtains for rooms she rarely used. She even explored adding barriers along the driveway to block sightlines from the street. The mansion was evolving, piece by piece, into a bunker. And yet, this transformation only intensified the house's surreal atmosphere. Rooms meant for comfort began to feel like hiding places. Hallways seemed to stretch longer at night. Doors remained locked, even when she was alone. The spaces she expanded for safety became spaces she wandered when she couldn't sleep, pacing in oversized sweaters, phone in hand, trying to outrun the pressure building outside her walls. In the end, the mansion shifted from an escape into a stage set, Britney's attempt to build a sanctuary inside a fortress that even she no longer felt fully safe in. Life inside Britney Spears' Beverly Hills mansion in 2007 was a strange mixture of stillness and chaos. Quiet rooms filled with noise from the outside world, long hallways that echoed with both children's laughter and late-night sobs. During the day, if you stood inside the foyer, you could hear the distant click of camera shutters through the walls. If you stepped out to the balcony, you might spot paparazzi crouched behind hedges, engines idling, waiting for movement. Inside, Britney tried to pretend it was normal. Her mornings were often gentle. She'd wake up to her sons climbing into her bed, small hands tangled in her hair, cartoons flickering softly in the background. She fed them breakfast in the sunny kitchen, the one space in the house that never seemed to feel heavy. Toys were scattered everywhere, plastic cars on marble floors, little socks abandoned under tables. For a few hours each morning, the mansion felt like any other home. But the calm rarely lasted. Every time she stepped outside, the siege resumed. Even a trip to the backyard with her boys could ignite a frenzy. Ladders unfolding, cameras flashing, helicopters hovering overhead. These weren't photographers. They were a permanent fixture, a living wall of strangers who measured her sanity through their lenses. The pressure of being watched seeped into the house like smoke. Inside, Britney oscillated between attempts at normalcy and the stress that came with constant surveillance. Some afternoons, she immersed herself in music, pacing barefoot around the living room with a speaker blasting demos or old hits. Other days, she barely left her bedroom. Friends came and went, hairdressers, assistants, cousins. They drifted through the house like witnesses to a life unraveling in slow motion. There were nights she cried on the staircase. Nights she ordered fast food for everyone, trying to create tiny celebrations in a house that felt increasingly hollow. The staff noticed it too. The tension, the exhaustion, the wandering. The house was too big for someone going through something so heavy. It swallowed her emotions, amplifying every fear and every moment of loneliness. The mansion didn't just hold Britney's daily life, it absorbed it, and with each passing day, the walls that were meant to protect her felt like they were closing in. By mid-2007, the Beverly Hills mansion was no longer just Britney's home. It was the epicenter of a storm. Every crack in her life, every fear, Every sleepless night gathered inside those walls. The world saw the headlines, the custody battle, the late-night outings, the shaved head, the divorce unraveling in real time. But inside the house, the struggle was far quieter, far more human, and far more devastating. The pressure outside was relentless. Dozens of paparazzi camped along the cul-de-sac, engines rumbling day and night. Some slept in their cars. Some climbed neighbors' fences. When she tried to leave the house, they swarmed her vehicle so closely that security sometimes couldn't pull out of the driveway. Every movement, every tear, every smile, every moment of exhaustion was documented, sold, and dissected. Privacy had dissolved completely. And inside the mansion, Britney felt it. Her emotional world shrank. Friends later described her as pacing the house for hours, unable to turn off her thoughts. She ate irregularly. She slept irregularly. She was trying to be a mother while being hunted like prey. She was trying to rebuild her image while breaking down in private. She was trying to defend her right to raise her sons while cameras captured every wobble, every breath, every moment of vulnerability. The custody hearings weighed heavily on her. On days she returned from court, witnesses recalled how she moved through the house like a ghost, tired, confused, devastated. The boys' rooms, once filled with laughter, felt unbearably quiet on the nights they weren't there. She kept their toys exactly where they left them, as if the stillness hurt less than a moving anything. Meanwhile, inside the mansion, a rotating cast of people drifted in and out. Managers, assistants, advisors, friends. Some helped, some exploited. Some didn't know what to do. The house, once intended as her sanctuary, became a crossroads for people trying to control, influence, or rescue her. And all the while, Britney was trying to stay afloat in a life no human could withstand, trapped between a collapsing public image and a private world imploding room by room. The mansion's walls heard everything. The whispered arguments, the frantic phone calls, the desperate attempts to regain stability. But the world would only hear the outcome. The final months Britney Spears spent inside the Beverly Hills mansion were the most harrowing. By early 2008, the house was no longer simply overwhelmed by the outside world. It had become the setting of late-night emergencies, frantic visits from friends, and moments so chaotic they would permanently alter the direction of her life. The walls that once promised sanctuary now echoed with panic. The turning point came on nights when Britney felt cornered, scared, and desperate to hold on to what mattered most: her sons. Custody tensions had reached their breaking point. Every hour seemed to bring a new confrontation, legal, emotional, or both. And inside the house, her stress manifested into erratic rhythms. She slept in spurts. She talked in circles. She retreated to the bathroom for privacy, the only place where she could momentarily shut the world out. But even that small refuge collapsed on a winter night when police arrived at the home after a custody dispute spiraled out of control. Helicopters thundered overhead. Floodlights swept across the driveway. Dozens of paparazzi swarmed the street as emergency responders tried to reach the front door. Inside, Britney refused to hand over her son, terrified and exhausted. The scene, later described in court documents and eyewitness accounts, was not the spectacle the media portrayed. It was the meltdown of a mother pushed beyond her limit. When she was taken to the hospital under a 5150 psychiatric hold, the mansion fell silent for the first time in months. Security guards stood by motionless. Photographers waited outside in stunned quiet. And the home that had once symbolized a new chapter now marked the end of one. In the following days, the house was picked apart, legally, financially, emotionally. Her father and lawyers stepped in. Decisions were made without her voice. The conservatorship machinery began to form. Britney would never again return to the mansion as its owner. She left one night in an ambulance, and in many ways, the life she had before that moment never came back. The house remained behind her, filled with abandoned toys, unmade beds, and the echoes of the breakdown the world would replay endlessly, while understanding almost none of it. When Britney Spears left the Beverly Hills mansion in the back of an ambulance, the house did not simply become empty. It became a crime scene of emotion, a hollowed-out reminder of everything that had fractured in her life. The paparazzi who had clogged the cul-de-sac for months slowly disappeared, replaced by lawyers, appraisers, and representatives who now controlled every decision. The mansion, once overflowing with movement and noise, fell eerily still. In the weeks that followed, the property was combed through by people who had never lived the pain inside it. Financial advisors assessed what could be sold. Security teams collected personal items. Staff cleaned up rooms that still smelled like baby lotion and late-night takeout. Britney's belongings were boxed, labeled, and moved under the supervision of others. The home she'd chosen as her sanctuary was no longer hers to walk through freely. Under the newly imposed conservatorship, every asset, even her own memories, was cataloged and managed. Neighbors later recalled how abruptly the energy shifted. The chaotic swarm of press vans vanished overnight. Delivery trucks came and went quietly, removing furniture and decor Britney had selected during her attempts to rebuild. In a matter of days, the house looked less like a home and more like a listing, lifeless, stripped, unclaimed. Britney, meanwhile, was fighting battles far beyond real estate. The aftermath of her breakdown ushered in years of restrictions, rules, and supervision that would define over a decade of her life. The mansion became shorthand for the moment everything changed. The tabloid image of flashing police lights outside its gates became a symbol the media replayed endlessly. But for Britney, the loss of the home marked something deeper. The loss of autonomy, the loss of privacy, and the loss of the version of herself who once believed she could start over inside its walls. By the time the house was quietly put on the market, Britney had already moved into the next phase of her tightly controlled life. She would never again set foot inside the mansion that held her most vulnerable nights. And yet, its shadow followed her, the symbol of a breakdown she would spend years trying to rise above, long after the front door closed behind her for the last time. Today, the Beverly Hills mansion where Britney Spears endured the darkest months of her life still stands. But its meaning has changed. For most passers-by, it looks like just another luxury home tucked into the quiet folds of Los Angeles wealth. The terracotta roof still glows in the afternoon sun, the gated driveway still curves out of sight, the trees still sway gently above the cul-de-sac. But for those who remember the spectacle of 2007 and 2008, the mansion is more than real estate. It is a symbol of a world that pushed a young woman to the edge, watched her break, and then profited from the pieces. The house itself, after Britney left, passed between owners who saw only potential value. Square footage, privacy, investment opportunity. Renovations were made, walls repainted, fixtures replaced. The traces of Britney's life were scrubbed away. The nursery where her sons once played was redesigned. The corridors she paced through late at night were staged with rented furniture. Listings described the home as sun-drenched, peaceful, ideal for entertainers. There was no mention of the helicopters that once hovered above its roof, or the mobs of photographers who turned its street into a war zone. But the legacy of the mansion doesn't live in its floor plan. It lives in the story it witnessed. In many ways, it stands as the physical reminder of a turning point in pop culture. The moment society began to confront how deeply harmful its obsession with celebrity could be. Britney's breakdown became a spectacle because we, collectively, allowed it to be. We watched through screens as if her life were a TV show. That house was the set. Over the years, as the #FreeBritney movement grew, people began revisiting the events tied to the mansion with new eyes. The late-night police standoffs, the ambulance, the desperation of a young mother losing custody, the isolation, the noise, the silence. All of it suddenly felt less like tabloid chaos and more like a cry for help that never should have been broadcast to millions. The mansion became shorthand for everything she endured without protection. Even today, long after the conservatorship ended and Britney reclaimed her voice, the Beverly Hills estate remains part of the narrative, a chapter frozen in time. Fans still discuss it, documentaries still reference it, journalists still cite it as a pivotal location in her story. The house symbolizes both her breaking point and the beginning of a public reckoning. And perhaps that is its true legacy, not the tragedy, but the awareness it forced into the spotlight. The mansion stands as a monument to the cost of fame, a reminder of what happens when a person becomes a product, and a warning of how easily a sanctuary can transform into a cage. It is a house forever tied to a moment the world will never forget, and one Britney Spears will never fully escape, even as she moves forward, stronger, louder, and finally free.